He's now taking a bow before he gets to the podium for the screening exercise. He is the...
Thank you, distinguished Senate President, distinguished principal officers of the Senate, other very distinguished senators here present, especially Senators Abdullahi Muhammed, Umaru Tonka-Mukura, and Godia Kwashiki. Mr. President of the Senate, before I proceed to do a brief introduction, may I crave your kind indulgence to make a very slight correction on my resume. If you look at page 1 of my resume, sir, under work experience, it says February 2017 to date. It is actually February 2017 to 29th May 2019. Having said that, Mr. President, permit me to put on record my very kind appreciation to Mr. President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces for finding me worthy to be nominated to serve in the Federal Executive Council. I know in my state there are so many more qualified persons, but in spite of that, Mr. President, in his own wisdom, chose me. I remain eternally grateful and humbled. Secondly, Mr. President, it is also very humbling that this very distinguished Senate has exercised its discretion to screen my humble self. I assure you, Mr. President, I will not take this privilege for granted. Finally, sir, I want to say that I want to put on record my very kind appreciation to distinguished Senator Abdullahi Muhammed for starting a mentoring program which is crystallizing today. Mr. President, we want to know that I served under now Senator, former Governor Abdullahi Muhammed as the Attorney General under the PDP. Again, Mr. President, I was equally very privileged to serve under Senator Umaru Tonka-Mukura as the Attorney General and then subsequently the SSG2's government under APC. And in the course of my job as the SSG and the Attorney General, I had cause to interact with the then Deputy Speaker of the Nasarawa State House of Assembly, Senator Godia Kwashiki. So I am giving these inferences, Mr. President, to underscore the experiences, the mentorship I got from these very distinguished senators from my state. Through this exposure, I was able to understand the intricacies of intra-party politics at a micro level. Again, they have taught me that public service is about sacrifice. It is on this premise that I'm here to humbly present myself for this screening exercise. Thank you, Mr. President. On the first question by distinguished Senator Ekunife, if you permit me to pronounce it that way, Mr. President. The challenge we have about contracts when they are drafted from the level of public institutions. From experience, is that they are sometimes, with all due respect, not properly written. In other words, public officers don't do their own bit. They don't do their own due diligence before, penning their signatures to most contracts. So in most cases, you see the contracts are skewed against the government. That is why you have so much challenges in trying to unbundle such contracts. It is always very difficult because of the legal challenges to immediately review contracts. Some of them are laced with clauses for arbitration. Some of them are laced with clauses for damages or for outright revocation. So, to be very candid, distinguished Senator, each contract must be taken on case-by-case basis before you can take what approach you can to either review or revoke or review. So I will, assuming I'm asked to work on those contracts, perhaps the best thing I would do is to suggest a team that will review such contracts and then bring up very legal, sustainable, bankable positions that government can adopt. But I don't think I can have a straitjacket answer to say we are going to review the contracts. It will be difficult outrightly because they should be treated on case-by-case basis. Now, your second question is about assuming I am sent to the Ministry for Women Affairs, what will I do differently? I think the major framework for women empowerment has been elucidated in the Beijing Conference resolutions. What we'll probably do is to domesticate such resolutions and see how we can empower women. We can look at our own various communities and see how programs like women empowerment, soft loans, widows empowerment scheme, and probably to a large extent some level of scholarship for vulnerable women. In the interim, Mr. President, I think if I am chosen to be Minister of Women Affairs, I'll equally work hand in hand with the First Lady and all women organizations to ensure that their challenges are addressed. Distinguished Senator Aduda, if I'm correct, raised the issue of strengthening laws governing activities of directors in either public or private companies. Well, hitherto, there was this understanding or this misconception that some companies are too big to fail in spite of all abuses. That is why easily referable is the issue of Enron Corporation in the US. Because it is a very big electricity corporation, a typical American doesn't believe the company can fail. It is too big, it's a behemoth. But somehow, because of insider abuses, because of non-disclosure, because of lack of openness, the company went under. It went into a very dubious debt. So it is exactly the scenario with the defunct NITEL. People thought NITEL has a very robust infrastructure. It has a wide coverage. It has a big subscriber base. Therefore, it cannot fail. But it fell. Why? Because people charged with running these companies have taken advantage of some loopholes in our companies and other matters law to abuse the process. So we need to strengthen, one, our corporate governance rules to ensure much more transparency in the conduct of directors of companies. And then two, we should also adopt the recommendations of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which is in the US, to ensure that every director of either a public quoted company or a private company makes substantial disclosure where he has interest, so that we can avoid conflict of interest. Thirdly, I think our supervisory institutions, the Corporate Affairs Commission, the Security and Exchange Commission, and other relevant bodies must ensure that annual returns are filed as at when due, so that we could detect telltale signs for any future failure of a public enterprise. If I guess
2 more minutes, right, Mr. President, 2 more minutes.
Have you exhausted the questions?
Yes, sir. If I, distinguished President, sir, Senator Aduda made reference to security issues based on my experiences interacting with security operatives as the office of the SSG. Security challenges is equally sometimes local in nature. So it is important that communities are, made to be the drivers of security challenges in our various communities. From our experience in Nasarawa State, we had what we call community-based conflict resolution mechanism, which is a community-driven security processes from bottom to the highest level of security operations. So what we do is we engage the youth leaders, the women leaders, the security agencies in outpost stations in the communities, village heads, and indeed district heads, to ensure that they participate in security processes. That is why, to a large extent, we have been able to minimize issues of harder farmers' conflict, in spite of the notorious nature of such conflict. So I would recommend that such, what I choose to call a Makura model, can be adopted at the federal level. It is pleasing to see that the IG has embraced the issue of community policing, which is akin to our processes at the state level. Now, distinguished Senator Egu spoke about my privilege of serving the public service. I indeed am privileged, and I'm indeed honored, sir. And you asked me what policies we need to do. Well, let me just say in one word, sir. The youth of Nigeria want only one thing, which is jobs. The youth want jobs. The youth want jobs. So it falls on us at the Executive Council to initiate policies that will translate into multiple jobs for our teeming youth. Thank you, Mr. President.